Dear student, the topic of today's class is Histology of Female Reproductive System. Female reproductive organs consist of right and left ovaries, uterus, uterine tube, vagina, and mammary glands. In this picture, you can see the different parts of female reproductive system: the uterus, uterine tube, ovary, vagina. Coming to general features of the ovary, ovaries are female goners that produce ova and hormones like estrogen and progesterone. Ovaries are almond-shaped structures attached to the back of broad ligament. Each ovary measures about 3 cm in length, 1.5 cm in width, and 1 cm in thickness. Surface of the ovary is covered by a layer of simple cuboidal epithelium called germinal epithelium. Germinal epithelium rests on a layer of dense connective tissue called tunica albuginea. In sectional view, the ovary shows a peripheral cortex and a central medulla. This is the picture showing cut section of the ovary, in which you can see the cortex part, and in the middle there is medulla. Cortex occupies the greater part of the ovary, and it contains ovarian follicles at different stages of development. During each menstrual cycle, a group of ovarian follicles start maturing under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. But usually only one attains full maturity and other degenerate. Coming to development of ovarian follicle, this part we also discussed in the embryology classes. The first ovarian follicle, that is the most primitive one, that is primordial follicle. Primordial follicle consists of a primary oocyte surrounded by a single layer of squamous follicular cells. Next stage of the ovarian follicle is the primary follicle, in which squamous follicular cells now become cuboidal and divide to form stratified cuboidal layer of granulosa cells. The oocyte in the primary follicle is separated from the surrounding follicular cells by a glycoprotein layer, that is the zona pellucida. In this picture, three pictures are there. From the left one, that is the primordial follicle, you can see the primary oocyte is there, and primary oocyte is surrounded by a flat squamous epithelial cells, that is the follicular cells. In the next stage, these flat follicular cells, they become cuboidal and they divide, and these single layer of follicular cells now become multi-layered granulosa cells, and these granulosa cells is separated from the oocyte by the zona pellucida. So the rightmost picture is the primary follicle with primary oocyte, red colored zona pellucida, and the granulosa cells, which are nothing but the flat follicular cells, become cuboidal and they become multilayered or stratified. The connective tissue stroma surrounding the follicle later differentiate into theca interna and theca externa. Next stage is the secondary follicle, in which oocyte enlarges and reaches its full size. Irregular fluid-filled spaces among the follicular cells appears and they join to form antrum. The antrum filled with liquor follicle. In this picture you can see the antrum. The oocyte is there with zona pellucida. The outer most connective tissue, they become theca interna and theca externa. Lastly, the follicle become mature Geppian follicle or tertiary follicle. Here the follicle enlarges in size and fluid in the antrum, dividing the follicular cells into outer cells, that is the membrana granulosa, and inner cells that surround the ovum and forms the cumulus oporus. In this picture you can see the granulosa cells, the antrum, a single antrum, and some granulosa cells, they are covering the oocyte. These are cumulus oporus. Now the Geppian follicle is seen bulging out of cortex on the surface. In this picture you can see one Geppian or mature follicle is bulging out from the ovary. Primary oocyte completes its first meiotic division and becomes a secondary oocyte. At mid-cycle, that is about 14 days of a 8-day cycle, there is sudden increase in amount of liquor follicle, which causes rupture of mature follicle and release of the secondary oocyte along with loosely adherent granulosa cells, that is the corona radiata, into the peritoneal cavity, and this process is called ovulation. Then ovum is drawn into the uterine tube. Here you can see the ovulation. The oocyte is coming out along with the cumulus oporus cells, zona pellucida. In this picture also you can see the ovulation is going on, in which one oocyte bulging out from the ovary with corona radiata cells. Corpus luteum. After ovulation, the wall of the follicle collapses, becomes infolded and gets transformed into the corpus luteum. The theca interna and granulosa cells are filled with pigments to become lutein cells, and this corpus luteum secretes progesterone and estrogen. Now the fate of corpus luteum depend on fertilization of the ovum. If the ovum is fertilized, the corpus luteum survives for 4 to 5 months. Then this corpus luteum is called corpus luteum of pregnancy. Otherwise, if fertilization does not occur, then the corpus luteum functions for only 10 to 12 days, and this corpus luteum is called corpus luteum of menstruation. After its functional activity is over, the corpus luteum undergoes regression and is replaced by a fibrous curve called the corpus albicans. Coming to atretic follicle, the series of changes that begin with the formation of an ovarian follicle and end with the degeneration of the corpus luteum is called an ovarian cycle. Several follicles start maturing during each ovarian cycle, but only one attains full maturity and undergoes ovulation. The other follicles degenerate and become atretic follicles. Now coming to the medulla, medulla lies deep to the cortex and made of loose connective tissue containing blood vessels, lymphatics and nerves. The hilum of the ovary is the site for entry of blood vessels and lymphatics. It is continuous with the medulla. The hilum also contains some hilar cells that are similar to interstitial cells of the testes. In this picture, you can see the medulla and medulla continuous with the hilum. Coming to oogenesis process, in the oogenesis, the stem cells from which ova are derived are called oogonia. Oogonia are derived in fetal life from primordial germ cells formed in the yolk sac. Primordial germ cells migrate into the developing ovary, then they differentiate into oogonia. Oogonia increase in number by mitosis. Oogenesis is a process whereby oogonia differentiate into mature oocytes. So oogonium first enlarged to from primary oocyte, then first meiotic division occur, then secondary oocyte, and secondary oocyte then undergo second meiotic division, and then mature ovum form. An oogonium enlarges to form a primary oocyte with diploid number of chromosomes, that is first 46 number of chromosomes, and undergo first meiotic division. After the first meiotic division, secondary oocyte and first polar body will develop, containing of 23 number of chromosomes. The secondary oocyte then undergo second meiotic division and form mature ovum and the second polar body. Thus, one primary oocyte ultimately gives rise to only one ovum. Thank you.